All right, so we have filter map, filter, reduce for each. So before we get started, let me bring this up. So let's do a couple quick refreshers to kind of get ourselves in the right mindset. Talk to me about functions. What do we know about functions?
There are ways to create large snippets of code that you can reuse later.
So to create large snippets of code to reuse later, I like to change large to small.
Small.
Should be small. What else?
They do one thing.
They do one thing. What else?
They
They
take parameters.
take parameters.
It can be named or anonymous.
They can be named or anonymous. What else?
They can return.
They can return something. What else?
You can move them a lot.
You can loop them a lot. Yes. Yes. You can
Learned that
put
yesterday.
you can put functions inside of loops, right?
They can not return.
What?
They can also not return.
They can also not return something. So if it feels like we have a good grasp of what functions are, that's awesome. Yep, kind of refresher. We have named functions and anonymous functions. Named functions are stuff that we want to name and reuse later. Anonymous functions we just want to declare and only use once. Talked about a little bit. Didn't really go into that, but what else? Functions should be simple. Functions only do one thing. Functions allow us to build reusable components inside of our application.
You can attach them to a listener.
Oh, you can attach them to a listener. So it's something we can do over and over again in a listener and button click, something like that. Feeling good, right? Good, because we're going to be using functions a lot today. So first off, let's define the problem that these four things solve. Oh god, that's really far away. So loops, very awesome. Very useful, very powerful, right? You can for loop over everything and do pretty much anything you want. But they're very tedious. They're very open. Allows you to do pretty much anything inside of it, which leads to spaghetti code. Has anyone heard the term spaghetti code before? A little bit. Can you kind of give us, Michael, a good working definition, or what your understanding
Well,
of
my understanding is that it's just kind of all over the place. It's not refactored at all, and there's not a real structure to the way it was designed in the first place.
Yes. The code structure started off as like one really good thought, but then after a while it kind of spiraled out of control, and now your nice pretty lines of code look less like lines of code and more like spaghetti. And they're kind of intertwined, but they're all mixed up. You have some pasta, you have some meatballs in there, you might have some shrimp or seafood or chicken or whatever, but it's all kind of jumbled up in one big ball.
Is that because it's doing too many things?
Exactly. Because they allow you to do too many things. So that is where these things come in. So instead of looping, because we still want a loop, this idea of a loop is very powerful. But we want some sort of better construct to allow us to help simplify our code and make our lives a bit easier. To kind of force us to use functions to encapsulate our logic, to build these Lego blocks with these little tiny pieces, so we can build those instead of this crazy big spaghetti mess. Spaghetti is good at dinner, not at coding. So, the first one, the for each. So all of these methods are methods that are on arrays. So everything we're going to talk about is based on arrays. So if we wanted to do something for each item inside of the array with for loops, we would do something like this, right? For let I equal 0, for people.length, yada yada yada, then do something for each time, right? We kind of start building it up. Well, this is where I have the first one, which is the dot for each. So instead of the giant for loop, we're just saying people dot for each, and then we pass it a function of what we want it to run for each person. So that function has one parameter. It's anonymous, so it's not named. It can be named. You can pass in a named function. But that function has one parameter, and that parameter is each item as we go through. So if my people array is populated with everybody in this room, all 11 of us right now, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each person, whenever it starts off, is going to start off with me. So I'll be the first person. It'll do the logic. Then it'll go to Jeff. Person will be Jeff. Then it'll go to Gus. Then it'll go to Dino, and so forth. So that person is the representation of which one that we're on at that point. It's the equivalent of people I in this example. So see how we're console.logging people I? Instead, we're console.logging people person. Person.
So, relating it to the card blackjack.
Yep.
You would say,
Yeah.
deck.
Yep.
For each card or
Yep.
suit.
Yep.
Do something with it. I give it to the dealer or whatever.
Yeah. So if I wanted to display a person's hand. Player one hand was an array, right? That you added stuff to. So I can do player one hand dot for each. That card arrow, and then inside of that I add to the DOM. Instead of doing a for loop over it, I'm just saying, hey, person dot for each. It's very similar to a for loop. It feels the same way. It acts the same way. The syntax I think is a bit cleaner and a bit prettier, less going on. Don't have to care about I's or pluses or what are we doing to. It's kind of does it for you.
English.
What?
More English.
Yeah, it's more English.
You said that person was equivalent to people I, right?
Yep.
Not personnel, people
Yeah.
I.
Yeah. And this is kind of a naming convention I like to follow. Is whatever the array is, it's the plural. Whatever the actual item is, it's a singular.
Man, people are popular today.
I know. Wish
I
could
get
just-
a lot of
On
scam
Monday.
calls.
Yeah. Wish I get some phone calls every now and again.
Yeah,
Nobody loves you.
I can test.
You could only put an anonymous function in?
What?
You could only put a...
Nope.
So you could do people.for each and then just have a function
Yeah,
with the input in it?
the same way that we registered events on the page by passing in a reference to that function,
Mhm.
we can do the exact same thing here. So if we had a function that says like work on people or like push person to a DOM, we can just put it there. So we could bring up a notepad for this. Everybody's just blowing up. Can I copy this? Aha. Yep. So if we had our people here, since these things only take a person right here, what I could do is people.for each, then pass it show greeting to person. And people.for each, add person to DOM.
And those are just other functions
Yep,
that we have to just pretend in.
yep. So like I could do something like this as well.
So the top one's just a way to pass multiple functions.
For each people is an array
Yep, people's an array.
of persons, of objects.
Objects.
So when you're passing a function to it, for each object in the array, do this.
Yep. For each object inside of people, run show greeting to person. For each object inside of people, run add person to DOM.
So what's up with the parentheses? Before person and then at the end of the function.
Right here.
Yeah, is that just a thing that goes along with these for eaches?
Yep. So these for eaches is a function itself.
Oh, okay.
Because remember in JavaScript we can pass functions as parameters. So that for each is actually a function that takes a function. That's why we can pass it something like this.
Is person a key value? People?
Yeah, or it's just in a array right now.
So my question,
Yeah. Yeah. What's up?
I'm thinking, so that's grabbing the first index of
Yep.
data right there.
Yep, it's starting
Now,
at.
if you wanted to say grab the fourth one, you could inside the first line, first person, instead of bracket.
This is for when you want to iterate over the entire array.
Just look at the whole thing.
Yep,
You can't
yep.
just. Alright.
There's something else we're going to get to that'll help solve that problem.
Okay.
But for right now, this is saying for each item in this array, starting at the first. Yeah.
Just so I have a clear understanding.
Mhm.
Person, where's person defined? How is person defined? I'm trying to relate it back to the array.
Yeah. So person is just a variable name that I call the parameter for the function.
Oh.
I can call that X. I can call that A. I can call it carbob or call it whatever I want.
It's an object like that.
Yep.
And it has a greeting for each, but it could have
have
an
the-
age.
Their name, their age, hair color, shirt style, how many apples they have.
So person is just a construct that you made right there.
Yep.
So that you can reference or attach it to
Yep.
each cell of the array.
Yep.
Okay.
Like the I and 4?
Yep.
Right.
So instead of the I just pointing to the index or just being like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I is now the whole object or whatever is actually inside of that array.
Could you nest for eaches like you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
with a regular for loop?
Yep. All the same rules still apply here. You can nest them. The scoping rules still apply as well. These create a new little local scope. Like all the same rules apply. Just the syntax and the ideas and how we're thinking about it changes slightly.
No, search.
Yeah. Feeling good?
So in our when we were creating the deck,
Mm-hmm.
remember when we did the nested for loop and and then we were making card objects.
Yep.
And instead of just having a rank and a suit, we also had a rank value as well. So if you wanted to do suits for each suit and then you do ranks for each rank, would you have the ability to add a rank value still? Because you're not leveraging I anymore.
You would not. So the dirty little secret is that this function actually takes 2 parameters. Actually takes 3. But like, so that's the object, that's the item. Second parameter is the index. And the third parameter is the array itself, but we don't care about that. So if I wanted to, I could still access I. It's still there for you, but it's not up front. Because this wants you to stop thinking in terms of I and start thinking more in terms of what I'm actually doing. It's trying to get out of your way. Feeling good with 4-H?
I get the concept, I'm just trying to understand how to apply it.
So you can use this anywhere. You can use this today anywhere where you used the for loop last week. Building the deck, displaying cards, counting cards.
It's probably depends on the situation, but which do you find yourself using more? Like a for loop or for each?
I typically try to do 4-H's. I try to program it without loops. There's a couple. There's the other 3 constructs make sense. But that being said, if I'm trying to solve something and a for loop comes to mind, like I have to loop over something to solve it, I'm using a for loop immediately.
again, with like the deck example, if it would be deck dot for each car, whatever. And then the show greeting person would be like the deck value, deck face, deck card thing, put in there, okay.
It's just another way to look at a for loop. So, we have a for each. Next up, we have our map.
You're not streaming.
What?
You didn't push record again.
I didn't hit stop record. I'm still recording.
Oh, never mind.
Just check. Way to keep me honest. So mapping. So did we ever incur? So what this solves? So this takes everything inside of your array and changes everything inside your array to a different value. So a common example of this is squaring numbers. If I had an array of numbers, and I wanted to square each number and put those into a new array, I'd have to have a new array, I have to for loop it over, and then inside I have to square it, then I have to add it to a new array, and there's a lot of steps involved. Well, map takes that and makes it a bit easier. So without map, let's say I have a list of people, and they each have a birthday. And that birthday is actually an object that has 3 properties: day, month, and year. Okay? And I want to get the birthdays for everybody inside of that array and format it into a special way, just to get the day. Maybe for a company Rolodex, or maybe for Slack, or it doesn't matter for what. I have to do something like this, right? New up a new array, and I do my for loop. Then inside of that, I would have to do my formatting logic. People, birthday.month plus yada yada yada, and then push it to the new array. It's doing a lot of things in there, right? It would have been nice. This is where map comes in. Map will simplify this into just that.
Person's closed, it's a closed ring.
Oh, whoopsies. That's not good.
Okay.
That's a copy and paste there right there. There we go.
Also, is it okay that person's not in parentheses
Yep.
at the beginning of the announcement?
Yeah.
Close it here.
It still works because it's only one parameter, but
You had 2 yet, we can close it.
so all this is, so map just takes a function that says for each person inside of my array, so for each item inside of my array, convert it to this format. And then stick it into a new array. So for here, I'm taking my people, which is an array of objects that could be complex, and I'm mapping it to just a couple string, to just a string.
And birthday is an array.
Birthday is an object. It has 3 values.
Oh, you have the dash and parentheses there.
That's to add the dash to the formatting. So like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
your
so
birthday
yeah,
month.
day, month.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this is creating a new array, right?
Yep.
It's not changing that array at all. It does is just create.
Correct.
So if you have to define it first.
Yep.
What that new array is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the difference between birthdays and birthday?
Birthdays.
That's the new one.
Yep.
It's a plural. You said make the new one plural
Mm-hmm.
and make the argument.
And when you say new one, you just mean the replacement. You don't.
Array.
There's not a new array.
Yep.
It's the same
Birthdays is a completely new array.
It doesn't alter the original
It's different than
Right, well, I
people.
thought you just said, I asked you if your birthday was an array, you said it's an object.
That one's
Birthday.
Birthday is an object.
Yep.
birthdays.
So you got people array that has objects called birthday in it.
Yep.
And you're gonna bring a new array called all birthdays.
So all birthdays, you're saying it's an object that will have a collection of everybody's birthday.
All birthdays will be an array of strings.
All birthdays
Will be an array of strings.
will be in, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
That would be the day and month formatted with the slash between it.
Right, okay.
So you probably wouldn't, sorry,
Yeah, no, yeah.
Just making sure.
Yep.
What this is.
you probably wouldn't use that array of strings though.
I mean, if I'm displaying it somewhere, yeah.
Sure.
Or I would use it to pipe into something else.
Okay, but map is usually just for altering a current array. You usually don't return the array of strings that you're getting from it.
I'd probably pipe it into something else.
What is every object?
It's a structure.
The structure.
Yeah. So like the people is an array. Forgot people sign. So people is an array of objects that have each object has a birthday object inside of it.
It's an object inside of an object.
It's okay. It's not scary. It's not scary. It's nothing terrifying here. And then we're just saying for each people, we want to pull out the birthday and format it into a string. And that's what this is doing right here.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to blackjack.
Yep.
Just talking about objects inside of objects. Could I have made an ace have two values? Just the ace though?
You could.
I'm just trying to think of how, I mean, I did that
Yeah.
another way. I'm just trying to think of a simpler way.
That'd be
Would you do like a bullet?
I just made a button that said change aces. And well, I actually did it if you busted. It just changed. I just did I did deck
Mhm.
dot whatever card value equals 1 instead of 11.
So this is really handy when you're converting a list of something into something else. So a place where you could have used it in your homework last night is at some point you're converting your objects of cards into some sort of DOM element, right? A list item, a span, an image, some sort of thing. So now we can map them all from an array of objects to an array of list items, then pass that to a for each that displayed it. So now we're taking that logic that would have been in one for loop, and that for loop would be getting really big. We're saying, hey, we're going to do this and then do this. And the reason why that's good is that now I can change how I'm creating the DOM without changing how I'm inserting into the DOM. Now my insert into the DOM is a constant function that I know works, that I can use in multiple places. So I saw a couple aha moments in there, which I like. So that's map. Next up we have filter. So filtering is us taking our array and filtering out items that we don't want. So we're going from an array of 10 to maybe some sort of subset. So in this example, we want an array filled with people who are only wearing orange shirts. So with for loops, we would have to, for I equals 0, loop through it, for each person compare if they're wearing an orange shirt. If they are, push them to a new array. Okay. So what filter allows us to do with this in mind it says, hey, look at people. Man, I have so many typos this morning. Hey, look at people. Filter down, give me everyone where person.shirt equals orange. So this now takes a function that needs to return a truthy or falsy value.
See what you did there.
And it'll give me all items where that function returns a truthy value.
Trying to get rid of us. Or kid yourself.
I mean, I was hoping someone else would wear an orange shirt today. It's not that uncommon of a color, you know. Nobody.
So if the object,
Yep.
Mark, had a property of shirt
Yep.
and it equaled orange, it would return Mark?
Yes. So let's head back to the array we had before. Let's add a shirt here. Orange. And let's add a second person here.
Gross. Calling you gross.
Call me gross.
Totally gross from now on.
So now our people has an array of just me and Chris. Down here, people.filter, person.shirt,
Console.log.
this would be an array with only the mark object.
And then from there, you can query whatever else
Yep.
is in that object.
Yep.
So how would you go about doing multiple attributes to filter? So person.shirt equals orange and.
And person.birthday.year is greater than 1980. So this just needs to return a truthy value. Truthy or falsy value. And it will stick any object where it returns truthy for into this new array.
So if we were going through our deck, that would pretty much be like, okay, return all of the hearts.
Yep.
And then you can narrow it down to return hearts with value greater than 4, whatever.
If I wanted all the face cards for the hearts,
Yeah.
it'd be deck.filter card, return card.value is greater than 10, and suit equals hearts.
Okay.
Feeling good so far? We have a for each that kind of loops over everything and does something. We have a map that converts an array into something. And we have a filter that takes a large collection and makes it smaller for us, somehow.
Can you use ors as well?
Yeah. You can use or. You can use all of our logical not things, so like nots, ors, greater than, less than, equals to, all the logic we've already established, you can use.
This kind of makes a little more sense than the other way.
It does. I like the other way is a bit more technical.
Yeah.
And under the hood, it's doing that.
It's doing
Like we're still looping over the entire array. We're still checking it. We're still pushing it. But we as the developers aren't, and it's doing it for us. So we don't care how it's doing it.
So is there an actual place where you can see where the filter function is and see what it does?
I mean,
Like, underneath it?
You could look into the actual code base of JavaScript if you want. I think the rendering engines are open source, I think. If you wanted to.
Yeah, it's-
That's in the, that would be in the specification.
Not me.
So the people that filter parentheses for that, is that a filter function? Because it's in where there would usually be empty parentheses for when you're defining the home function.
So you said a couple things there. So like, let's say it again, just so I know the question. No,
Well-
I'm on a tangent.
You know, when we create a normal function in JavaScript, there's usually the equals parentheses and
Mhm.
equals dash, but that is the empty parentheses being occupied by people.filter.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make it like a lambda function?
It doesn't. So like because there's the persons out of the parentheses now in the red parentheses, that just means that we're passing a parameter into that function instead of passing nothing. So whenever we make like an init or a main function, we wouldn't pass it anything, right? Like we're not passing that function anything. Here we're passing a value into that function. Does it make it a lambda function? Yes, but not for that reason. So lambda function, we're kind of getting into functional programming a little bit, which is okay. And that just says it's just a function that does something. So we'll get into functional programming more and more as we go. It's nothing scary. It's nothing math-based. It's nothing nuts.
Quick question. Are these functions syntactical sugar, or are they more efficient than doing the regular for I equals X?
They can be more efficient.
The function stuff has been optimized? Okay.
Like it doesn't we don't have that control over it. So these can easily be not as efficient, but they can easily be more efficient. So, but if we're using these, then we don't care about how they're actually implemented. We're saying that the implementation is being taken care of from someone else who's specializing in it, who's optimizing it for us.
Okay. A trust factor.
Yep, I trust people like that because I don't have the time to dedicate myself to make it better, so they're doing it for me.
So there's two goals for these functions. One, to make your life as a developer easier, and then just to make it as efficient as possible as a
Yep.
red.
I would say more heavier weight on the first one than the second one. The first one being making our lives as the developer a lot easier. The optimization gains that I could and maybe benefit by doing this in a for loop are not worth it if the code is a little bit cleaner. You can look at this and almost know immediately what's going on, right?
Pseudocode.
Yeah. Versus this, where you're just like, well,
Yeah.
let me think about this for a second.
So again, just to make sure that I, practical example or whatever.
Yep.
If you have a web page.
Yep.
That has all of your cards that you can like see, all 52 of them on the page.
Yep.
And you have each of those cards in an array.
Mm-hmm.
Use that to say, okay, I want all of the red cards to be at the top. I want all of the black cards to be at the top, at the bottom.
Yeah, I can
I
use
want it to
this
be in this order.
to not so much as ordering, but just saying display.
Organizing.
Yes. So, filter, taking something and shrinking it down. This next thing we're going to talk about is called reduce. Warning, this one breaks people's brains. Yeah, so warning, but it's okay. So reduce. So far we've gone from an array to an array, right? For each doesn't return anything, but map goes from an array to an array. Filter goes from an array to an array. Well, reducing goes from an array of values down to one value. So I'm trying to take something and combine them all down into one value itself.
Is it still a single object array?
So a single object or a single value, but it's going from a lot of things down to one thing.
But it's still in an array?
Nope,
It's not.
it's not.
Okay, so add,
So it'd be like a sum of it.
Yes.
which is.
That's actually a really good example. So if I had an array of people and I wanted to figure out how many apples those people have, right? I'd do something like this, right? I'd define let total apples equals 0, loop through the array, count them up. All right? Feeling good with that? So with reduce, it's a bit different. I'm saying reduce. Now instead of only one parameter, our function now takes 2 parameters. The first one's called the accumulator, and the second one is the actual value itself. So this is my running total. Now inside of this, I just say, hey, what did I do? What was my logic? How am I doing it for this item? So how am I building up this accumulator object into a total? I also have to pass a starting value. So I'm starting at 0. For each person, I'm adding apples to it. And as we go, I'm adding apples at each time. Then I'm storing it inside of total apples. So we have 1 and then 2.
Does the total start out at 0?
Yep.
And 0 is telling it to do that?
Yep.
So if that was 1, then total would be 1.
Yep.
Basically the same question.
Okay.
Just to be sure. You start at 0.
Yep.
And if person apple equals 3, then it'd be
3.
total would be 3.
And now that 3 becomes the total for the next person.
Right. So if total was 1,
Yep.
then total would, and person is 3, that'd be 4.
Yep.
Okay.
So a good example where this applies in your homeworks for the weekend. You had cards, right? Each card has a total. But I wanted to get the total for the card's hand, I would use a reduce. And what that would look like is const total hand. Hand total equals player 1 hand dot reduce total lowercase t total card. We start at 0, right? Then return card dot value. Return total plus equals card dot value. That would give you the same result as if you did a for loop over the player's hands and added together. If you're not quite there with this one yet, that's okay. Because I could almost argue that this is more complex than doing the for loop. Right? We're an anonymous function that's creating stuff. We have an accumulator that's flying around somewhere. We're returning a weird value. But after a while, this becomes a bit more scalable, a bit more easier to prevent yourself from doing spaghetti code. Yeah, yes.
So if you had a function called update player 1 score.
Yep.
And you would, in this case, would you want hand total to be global or
Local.
local? But in the other way,
Mm-hmm.
it was supposed to be global, right?
It could be, yeah.
Did you have to make it global? You didn't have to.
So now we've kind of discussed the concepts. in picture form. If we had an array of fruit, we want to slice everything in it. If we want to filter our fruit to only oranges, we'd use filter. If we wanted to make a fruit salad, that's when we'd use reduce.
And the first one from that, like slicing would be getting the object of it.
Yeah. Whatever the implementation details of that are. Is that we're slicing each object inside of it. I like pictures like this.
I like fruit salad.
I like fruit salad too.
So for the map example, let's break down
That's
the
what
object.
We should have free salad.
How
I'm with
many,
you on that.
like, it would be how many slices would make that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to the reduce? Or the one that you have with the card.
Should go with-
Yeah. Now with these, feel free to start using them. They'll be handy in the code wars. They'll be handy in problem solving. It helps kind of reshape how you think. In that same breath, don't feel pressure to use them. I encourage you to use them, but if you're not quite sure, solve it with the tools you know and feel better with, so like for loops and while loops. And then reach backward to use these to really understand.
Would this work for arrays of arrays?
Mhm.
How would you, like for objects, you just say card.value.
Yeah, if there's an array here, so you just treat this as an array.
Okay. So you maybe have a map inside.
You can have a map inside of a map, or reduce inside of a map. And something like that.
So applying this to objects, how would you reduce it to an object? Would that be the salad? The
Yeah.
fruit salad?
Yeah, or whatever the implementation details of that is, yeah. You could reduce this down to an object. And instead of starting with 0, you would start with an empty object and go from there.
So the object, it would be a singular object of a type.
Yep.
Not multiple objects inside an object.
Right. It's always going from a lot of things down to one thing. Whether that one thing is an object, a number, a string, or something like that, that's up to you, but it's always a array. It's an array down to one thing. One thing.
Okay. And it could be an object or a string.
Mhm. Yep.
Or variable.
Yep.
Okay.
One reduce goes down one level.
Yep.
So an array of arrays will return an array if you did reduce.
So not necessarily. You could reduce it down to an array, or you can reduce it down to an object. If you have an array of an array, you would have to reduce the insides of those array every single time, then reduce the parent array. So you'd have nested reduces. So now that we flexed our brain muscles for a little bit, it's 11:06. Let's take a 14-minute break, come back at 11:20, and we'll build something.